Now, I was absolutely heartbroken to see Ange Postecoglou leave Celtic Park to become the new manager of Tottenham. But as soon as that happened, I just felt it in my gut, in my heart of hearts, that Ange was going to make a big splash in the Premier League this year. I had Tottenham in the pre-season, before Harry Kane was sold, to be my dark horse, to be in amongst the title race, make a bit of a splash in the top four and grab a bit of the headlines. And I really enjoyed following Tottenham this season through the transfer window and through all the kind of ebbs and the flows of the season, how Ange Ball has adapted to the Premier League, all the kind of notable results. And obviously, if you watch and you kind of follow Tottenham, you see the horrific situations that they found themselves in with injuries and availability as the season's gone on. And for me, I think that they've done a fantastic job of keeping in amongst 5 points of Liverpool, 3 points in Man City. Now, yeah, maybe there's a game in hand here and there and all the rest of it, but to be that close to the very tippy top of the table with really not that much transfer activity, I think is an absolute astonishing achievement. And I think this is the perfect time to have a little look at Tottenham, take a little step back in this winter break, have a look at the squad, where they lie in the table, the fixture list, etc., and think, who are the players that are performing, who are helping Tottenham hit this level, who's maybe holding them back, where do they maybe need to reinforce, the manager himself, what's been working for Ange, and what has he maybe had to adapt or develop in the Premier League with this Tottenham team. And ultimately, where do we see the improvement coming from Tottenham in the second half of the season? And that will then lead us to the final part of this, which is, what does a successful season now look for Tottenham as they find themselves still in the cup, very much in the top four race, and maybe a push if the stars align and some things really go in their favour, maybe still they're going to have a say in the title race. So what does a successful season look like now for Ange and Tottenham? At any point in the video, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. But get into the comment section and let me know, what does a successful season for Tottenham now look like? I'll be really interested to catch your thoughts and feelings in the comment section on this one, guys. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into it. Now, this is a Tottenham squad that has played the majority of games this season. So the players in white that we've got here are the guys that have had the most Premier League starts so far this season. And it's quite tight in a few different positions because, as you know, with James Maddison and maybe one or two other guys, they've been, out for a while, or a few of these guys have been in and out quite a few times this season with when they've been available and unavailable. And, the other guys here is basically the second string, the guys that have been filling in, returning from injury, covering guys that are injured, coming off the bench every week, whatever it might be. There's a variety of different things going on here. And Ange, for his first season, Ange is very well known for anyone who's watched him up close and personal in any of his previous appointments, for really putting the individual focus on the pitch, on the players' talents and what they bring to it, and the sort of gung-ho attacking kind of pressing system that he offers and makes them play, to have fun, to entertain, to score goals, to win matches. And I think if we have a look at the defence, first and foremost, Pedro Porro, in recent weeks, especially with the wonder goal and whatever, is really coming to prominence much more now. And I thought in the Man United game especially, I thought he was top drawer. But this whole defence is really taken to Ange Ball in a big way, because the defence is normally the area that will get a lot of criticism in these types of report cards in terms of goals conceded and that kind of thing. Because when you look at Tottenham's actual, if you don't look at actually what the games were and how they all unfolded, you just look at it from a bird's eye view of the results. It's easy to say, oh, well, conceding 4 goals to Brighton, conceding 2 goals to Man United. Whenever you concede 2 goals or more, you can't expect to get much of a positive result out of the game. It's just the general, when you're taking this bird's eye approach. Now, obviously here, the Burnley game is the outlier. And again, it's also the outlier for the time that Tottenham has scored more than twice this season. But the defence is, maybe the first thing you could look at quite easily here. The Chelsea game is the massive outlier, of course, as we know. And the Wolves game, yeah, Eric Dyer played, I suppose, if you want to call that an outlier element. But I think the defence, for the most part, have been pretty good. I think it's just they've been a bit undermanned. And as we've seen with some of the games, especially when it comes to the red cards and whatever, injuries, of course, to Van de Ven. Romero's been injured and suspended. Royale's played centre-back. Davis has been playing centre-back. Dyer, it's been basically all full-backs at times as well. So I think taking into consideration the actual personnel and the actual individual situation, that's actually not that bad reading overall on those results, So I think Tottenham's best back line here of the white back four that we've got here with Vicario is top 4, top 3 calibre defence in the division. If all fit and available, I think Vicario's proven himself to be one of the best goalkeepers in the division for doing exactly what's required of him. He makes very memorable game-winning, game-defining saves and moments. He's very brave, and he gives the defence a nice layer of trust, because Ange does put all these defenders into difficult 1v1 situations in counter-attack, which is where they need to use their physical attributes, their strength, their pace, and their intelligence to read the game and read the positions to recover into. And Romero and Van de Ven have really, flourished under this, as has Udogie, of course, coming in this kind of inverted fullback role. In the attacking sense, he's been getting forward much more, especially since the absence of Maddison. In the Man United game, he was basically an attacking midfielder for the entire match. But defensively, Udogie, if he needs to come back and be the left back and do his job, he's probably the best left back in the league this year for my money. So I think the defence gets pass marks for me, to be quite honest with you. Now, the midfield is really where Tottenham's squad gets really broken apart here, because early this season, Bissouma, Sarr, Maddison was the midfield, and this is when Tottenham went on that great run of just winning games every week, scoring a couple of goals. It was really the whole start of the season. The draw away to Brentford is not a bad result, opening game of the season, beating Man United, beating Bournemouth, beating Burnley, beating Sheffield, all games you expect them to get points in a normal situation, which is fantastic. We're scoring goals. The draw in the derby, which is right fine. Beating Liverpool, Luton, Fulham, Tottenham, Palace there at the end. And this is still with Maddison, Sarr, Bissouma in the team, as you can see here. This is kind of where everything does start to drop off here at this Chelsea game. And it's really been since then. Lo Celso's come back from injury. Bentancur's come back from injury. Højbjerg has came out of the cold. It felt like Højbjerg was totally shunted to the side. Kind of almost Eric Dyer-esque, like Ange is just, I can't use you really in very many situations. He was even getting more and more minutes and eventually getting some starts as well. And Ollie Skip has been ever present in this team, because he's like, doesn't really matter what your opinion is of this guy. He's either a 6 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10, because it's whether if you like him or not. He's all right. He's fine, isn't he? But he's not, like, he played in James Maddison's position against Man United. Ange just gets the best out of people. And Skip just puts in great endeavour and all the rest of it. He's a fine. He's a 5 out of 10, a 6 out of 10, whatever you want to think of him as. But this kind of, like, I think the jury's still out. Højbjerg, I think, as soon as someone wants him, I think Tottenham will gladly sell him very quickly. Lo Celso, I think he's done. I think he's looked the part. I think you can definitely contribute in this team, but it's just really if someone wants to come and spend money on him, which with his injury record, that's probably unlikely. So can you keep him on side to being a relief player, to come on for the last 30, 20 minutes of most matches? I'm sure he'll get starts here and there, but that'll be his primary kind of job in the team if he's happy with that. I think Lo Celso's looked handy enough when fit to kind of help do that job. And Bentancur as well, I put in this boat as well. I've had some interesting comments about Bentancur. I know the Tottenham faithful are in love with Bentancur, and I think he's a great player, don't get me wrong, right? But see, when I look at this midfield as a whole, when we think about this kind of discussion that we're having, the best midfield has got Bissouma in it. The best midfield has Maddison in it, right? Bentancur, some of his love. Sarr, some of his think is underrated and all the rest of it. I'm a fan of both of these guys. I think both of them have had a great time under Ange Ball. I think Ange likes both of them. But I think if Tottenham are going to buy a midfielder, which they probably will at some point, he's only spent money on Maddison, you've got to think the manager is eyeing up another midfielder to come in and enhance this squad, because it needs enhancing. Let's call a spade here. He's not going to buy over James Maddison for me, and he's not going to buy over Bissouma for me in terms of the position to put pressure on it, if that makes sense. So I only feel like it is this position here that maybe money will be spent. I'm not saying he needs to improve this area of the pitch, but I'm just saying next time they buy a midfielder, this is maybe the spot they're going to be coming in for. So Bentancur, Lo Celso, these guys, their injury record isn't great. They do look like quality elite players, but like Tottenham are a top 4 Premier League club. That's their aspirations, is to be Champions League level, which means you're in the transfer market every window for the best emerging talent in world football. And if you pick up a Mickey Van de Ven or a Destiny Udogie of a midfielder, you're going to play him because he's going to be amazing, and that's just going to be the way it shakes out. That's the way football moves on. And I think the same can be maybe said with what's going to happen up front. Now, I think Richarlison's got 6 goals in the last 6 games or something like that. He's starting to put the ball in the net more consistently. The manager's backed him, starting to get more of a tune out of him, and that's all great. Kulusevski, for me, has been one of the standouts of the season. Maybe not spoke about Maddison enough, which is a bit of a disservice to him. Apologies. Maddison has been everything you wanted Maddison to be when you signed him, and it's just unfortunate that he has been injured, and I think as soon as he comes back, there's a huge difference in this Tottenham team straight away. But Kulusevski is one of the guys that is really went, I'm a world-class player, let me show you. It doesn't matter Maddison's not in the team. It doesn't matter that this guy's missing or whatever. Give me the ball on the edge of the box and I'm going to make something happen and I'm going to get the business done. And I think he's really went up. He's went up levels this season under Ange. And I think he has to be, in the best front three, the best starting 11 at the moment for Ange and for Tottenham at the moment. And Brennan Johnson is a fantastic understudy, doppelganger, rotation player to play alongside him. If Ange wants more pace on this side, he can do it. Or if it's for rotation purposes or later in the game because Ange loves his bench, then having Kulusevski or Brennan Johnson out here, I think both these guys have looked brilliant for the role you'd expect to have him in the team. I've not seen too much of the Vlies guy, to be quite frank. And Son, of course, is the man at Tottenham at the moment. And I think the fact that Tottenham and Son is... I think Son's best position is left forward. I think Ange will probably end up playing him in this left wing, left forward position as well. Which means, like, Bryan Gil, he's probably behind Lo Celso, way behind Bentancur, probably in front of Højbjerg, in the case of that kind of batch of outliers at the beginning of the season and what their standing is now in the squad. I'm not too sure. I think the jury's still out a little bit on Gil, but I think Werner coming in is definitely going to put a lot more pressure on Richarlison's position than anything else. I think the best front three will come to feature Son, Werner and Kulusevski. So I just think Werner doing that role in here to allow Son to be coming in as well as Kulusevski. I think that's just probably a bit more apex. And if I think about this as a Celtic fan, Werner's a way better Kyogo than Richarlison is. Richarlison's much more of a Giakoumakis. And Giakoumakis, if you don't know, was like the guy that came off the bench for 30 minutes every game after Kyogo. And, both of them would score in games. It would be fine. But Giakoumakis wanted to start and he left for America for some more money. That's all a bit of whatever. But I think that's going to be the way it goes, is Werner will probably come in here when Son returns. But Werner's versatility does help with the kind of, like the thin nature of this squad. There's a lot of players here, but it is kind of thin on actual quality. Because I don't think you can really count upon Gil in your depth. You can skip Vlies. The defence, you've got to give them their due because they've been putting their bodies on the line this year. Højbjerg is probably not fancied too long either. So this is really the main body of quality that's in the squad at the moment. Now, if we talk about Ange, the manager, right, this is his first season in the Premier League, coming from Scottish football, coming from Japanese football, Australian football, on a fantastic journey. I don't want to say rags to riches, because that's definitely not the correct phrasing, but it's that kind of, from obscurity to infamy. That's probably the best way of putting it. And this exact story is one of the main reasons I love football, because football is the absolute meritocracy. It doesn't matter where you're from in the world. It doesn't matter any other thing. I'm not even going to name them, If you're amazing at football, people will want you to manage their team, play for their team, whatever, because football is all about winning. It's all about entertainment. It's all about exciting. It's all about winning games, winning trophies. And, if you're capable of doing that, then you will eventually get yourself as high in the game as your abilities will dictate. And seeing someone come from Australia, which isn't a huge footballing country, and really go through this odyssey across world football to end up at the top of the game with all the resources at his disposal, an infinite war chest by comparison to every other appointment he's ever had and probably ever likely to have going forward. It's just beautiful from top to bottom. And I love that Celtic's involved in it as well. And I really enjoy following Tottenham as a result. I was at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last season to see Harry Kane become the Tottenham, all-time top goal scorer against Manchester City. And that was my first time in the stadium. Absolutely, I had a great time despite City losing. It was a good time to be there, a good game. And when we look at the results for the season, we've had a glance at them already. The season starts with the Brentford draw. And really, this is how good a start can you want in the Premier League against a variety of high quality opponents. Man United is maybe more name than substance at the moment, granted, but an away derby match at home in Liverpool, a lot of great, fantastic results until we get to the kind of, the moment where the wheels fall off a little bit and there's just absolute force majeure, stuff you just cannot cope with. You can't do anything about. There's no transfer opportunity, and it was pretty much unforeseeable in terms of how bad the situation is. I think the draw with Man City keeps a bit of the hope alive that Ange Ball still works in that sense, and it wasn't just a little flash in the pan at the beginning of the season. But I do feel that the manager was starting to come under question marks externally from anyone that doesn't get what's going on at Tottenham and see how much of an uphill battle they've got in every one of these games for a variety of reasons. I thought the Man City game was another one that just kind of helps shine the light on the fact that Tottenham, really, when they get fully armed up to the teeth, they could really just tear away and join the top two quite quickly, because they've been playing Emerson and Davis at centre back and stuff like that. It's just It's just bananas, you know, when you look at some of these lineups that have been going out. Some of these matches where they have been dropping the points. Never mind the ones they've been picking points up in. Red cards all over the place and everything else. So I think the manager's done fantastically well to adapt his strategy, adapt his tactics, not just to the league and move it up a level, because it's a little bit different to when he was at Celtic. For example, when I look at the tactics board here, and when I'm kind of thinking about, oh, this was like this guy at Celtic and whatever. Yeah, Kulusevski's maybe a bit more the Giakoumakis type, and if he stays in that position, that might be an evolution that the manager's made for this level of football versus having the Werner centre forward type, or putting Son centre forward and playing Werner left. Some people have suggested that as well. You've probably shouted that at the screen or made a comment. I'm sorry for not mentioning it earlier. But between these three midfielders, I know Bissouma and Sarr are not small guys by any stretch, but you know, at Celtic, there was like Rogic, there was Moy, there was O'Reilly. These guys are just a bit bigger framed, you know, a bit slower, but powerful, you know. Tottenham have just got way more power. A bit more like Højbjerg, actually, like an attacking Højbjerg, you know, kind of figure. So maybe Bentancur comes into that kind of mould a little bit. It's not quite as like broad, but that kind of, yeah, he's maybe, not quite as pacey or cover as much ground in that respect. So perhaps he does become that figure in the team. And like I say, I know there's a lot of admirers for Bentancur, and I think he's a great player. I'm not disparaging him at all, but I say it's just when I look at the midfield, that's the only thing I can think the manager looks at this team and thinks that's the next place to spend money. Because the tactics, the strategy, and the majority of players that he's got in the team, he's got them on board, he's got them all singing from the same hymn sheet, pulling in the same direction, and it just needs enhanced at this point. So I think the manager has done a fantastic job in his first 20 games in the Premier League, and really it does, you look at the Tottenham team, and the next area of this that I've done with other clubs is areas to improve, and Van de Ven can stay fit because, like, you know, going off in the Man United game, I've not seen any reports that really indicate the severity of that little injury that he picked up towards the end of the game, but I think if he can stay fit, this defence is credible against any opponent that they're likely to face. But Dragusin could come in to be a worthwhile deputy, especially if Davis is injured. And I know Ange and Tottenham have kind of had a wee second honeymoon with Ben Davis as a kind of alternate player here, but I think Dragusin's probably the one that would be favoured. But maybe the vulnerability in defence they have is the fullback areas, because as much as Emerson Royale and Ben Davis have kind of had, like, you know, like they've put their body on the line, blood, sweat and tears and everything to help Tottenham in these situations, they're definitely not the sort of players that are going to help you win the title. They're definitely not the sort of players that are going to help you, you know, like go on and become a Champions League club in that respect. So you either need younger players that are coming through to push Udogie and Porro and give you cover for them, or, you know, they need to step up a little bit. And, you know, a lot of other players in the Tottenham team have shown that they can do that. It's maybe one area this season. If Udogie gets injured, Udogie for me, like I mentioned earlier, is probably the best left back in the league. If you lose Udogie for a month or two, it's a very different defence all of a sudden, you know, similar to Pedro Porro. Again, if that was to happen and even if you put Udogie back over here, it just changes the whole complexion of the back four. So maybe even one defender that can play both sides, left and right. That could be fun. Good cover. It does feel that between these three guys, you've got centre-back covered as long as nothing mega mad happens. So maybe the full-back cover is the last place to improve on there. So that brings us to, what does a successful season actually look like for Tottenham now? Now, the first game after the winter break is an FA Cup match against Manchester City. And I think, hey, who knows, right? But if you can beat Man City in that game, you've got to think you're maybe one of the favourites to go on and win it. Ange, as you know, has lots of pictures of himself lifting trophies. He knows how to do it. He knows how to get the job done. And if you can put Man City out of the cup, then, you know, maybe that's something that you go for. I know winning a trophy would be a great thing for the manager, for the club and everyone involved. And the manager's not going to beat Man City and turn his nose up at this competition. He's not going to go into the Man City game not playing the best 11 absolutely possible, trying to win it. So I think that game in itself will be kind of handled in isolation, and let's see what happens in the FA Cup for Tottenham. But that then starts off a series of fixtures in the Premier League for Tottenham that culminates in a game against Aston Villa on the 9th of March, where they'll be going to weekend, getting better, getting stronger, with more and more players coming back fit and available, that they should be continuing to win. They don't have any other midweek football to worry about. Every other team that's anywhere near Tottenham around the time you get into February and March will have European games to be playing. Will have to rotate their squad, will have to bed in any of their transfer moves, outs or ins, and anything else in between. Whereas Tottenham, in a really settled position, who have been collecting a phenomenal amount of points in a very weak position at the moment, you would only fancy them. And if they can go through that period, Brentford at home, Everton away, Brighton at home, Wolves at home, away to Chelsea, and at home to Crystal Palace, before going away to Birmingham, if Tottenham can get close to maximum points in that sequence there, I can see them very easily being second or third in the table all of a sudden as soon as someone else has maybe, lost a fixture because, these things happen. Tottenham will probably accumulate games quicker than some of these other teams that have fixtures postponed and rearranged, etc. But points on the board is your best pal. And then that kind of springboards Tottenham into the final chapter of the season where the fixture list is ferocious. The final 2 games are Burnley and Sheffield, but the 4 games before that is Newcastle, Man City, and Liverpool. And I had to double check. It's a home derby to Arsenal. 4 of the last 6 games are absolute 6-pointers. So this could be like Tottenham are in the title race, let's say. So I think a successful season for them, FA Cup to one side, is if we have those last 6 games and Tottenham are in a sniff of the side in the title race or doing something, like that for me is a successful season, no two ways about it. I think the position they're in at the moment, the fact that they don't have European football to contend with as well, they've shown enough this season that they can get in amongst it in that respect. Now, if the FA Cup does unfold and they do go on a run and they do continue to kind of struggle to keep like the best squad of like, what do we have on the tactics board here? Like, we've deleted some guys as well, but like 16, 17 players. They could probably handle a cup run in that situation, but if they don't have all those players available and they're in a similar situation to what we've seen so far this year, then maybe there is a little bit of pain that goes on the squad. Maybe that becomes a step too far. So keeping a good cohort of guys fit and available for the rest of the season is paramount for Ange, and I think he will probably go into the transfer market once more. Is it for another midfielder? Is it for a forward? I'd be really interested to catch the comments on this one and see what you guys think. What does a successful season look like for Tottenham from where we find them at the moment? 5th in the league. 5 points off the top, 3 points off Man City, and it's all still to play for. On screen there now is some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share and retweet, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.